Hello, happy Friday. Welcome to Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 146 for May 10, 2024. Yeah, we're gonna let's just start with who I am. I'm Dale Warner, head of support for Plant and App. We have also Patrick Anderson, technical support manager for Plant and App. And we're going to talk about, well, pretty much anything you want to, but I have at least one problem that I want to try and solve today. Um, Maybe you can help me with. This is a weekly gathering of low-code enthusiasts, Plant and App uh, users. We get together and share techniques and challenges and experiences, and everyone is welcome. We record them, put them all out on YouTube. So youtube.com/plantandapp, you can get 146 hours of great low code content. We run this agenda where we say hello and then we go around the campfire. We always do first call. If you submit something in advance, we'll always try and put that right up front. We do another number of other things as we have time, and then an hour in, we go into our afterglow segment where we turn off the recording and just enjoy each other for a few more minutes. So do engage, meeting format, informal format. Jump in or show us something or chat with us, whatever you want to do. If you have noise going on behind you, we appreciate it if you mute. Other than that, you can use this QR code to submit questions in advance. And hello, all.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello, good morning.
Did anybody bring a first call this morning? Cool. We'll just jump on to my topic then. It's always good to deal with my problems, right? Um, I had a support request, and I thought I knew the answer, and then I didn't. So the question is, what's the nicest way to display row count in listings? You've got a listing, you've got whether it's 50 rows, 100 rows, whatever, and you want to display that somewhere at the bottom, and you don't want the pager control at the bottom of the page. I turned that off. So what's a nice way to display row count? Anyone do this?
I believe I may have something, but give me a moment to look it up.
Sure. So while you're looking that up, I will see if I can find the thing where I had started on this problem. And there's some fun things that you can do, um, but the my go-to is tends to be to put a token somewhere. For example, if you have a database token that runs the same where clause, you can get a count of them, and then you can put it on a button or put it on a button so that gets it either at the top or the bottom or pretty much wherever you want it. Um, and then you can also, that same token could be used even outside the listing, but it's a separate hit on the database. Um, and also means you got to understand how to use tokens. So um, one of the things that I tried or I did just to demonstrate it's possible is if your data source, if it's a SQL data source, very easy to add a column that has a one in it, and this one can be hidden. But the nice result of that is the number of records that you're seeing can be counted. So and that's so you've got I'm sorry, I'm skipping in here. Let's look at how this is set up. So because the data source has a one in that every row gets the number one, and then um, in I can't believe that in one record I am displaying it show in the footer a sum, so it's just summing up all the ones. and has a number of records shown, for example. So then if you're searching for a record, this is giving you the count of the number that are there because it's dynamically counting up that.
That's the way I've done it in the past.
So, but that's also highly dependent. In this case, there's 31 records, and I'm showing 10. So
Oh yeah.
it's telling you how many are shown, not how many are there total, unless you choose not to have a filter. You set a filter to a very
Sure.
high number. Um, so then another one, I framed the SQL query so that it has a count of records and it's showing in all rows. And I thought I was going to be able to show that value somehow. But I mean, in this case, I've put it in a tooltip, but um, you, I thought I would just be able to show it as a record at the bottom, but there doesn't seem to be an option for that. If I go to all records and look at the um, that's tooltip. If I go the show and footer, there's either some don't show it to show the sum or show some text. This text doesn't include. You can't use the name of the current token in the footer, so I couldn't just get it to show there. So that was kind of a dead end. Ben, have I given you enough time yet?
Yes, so basically, I didn't put it on the bottom. I put it at the top of my grid, but it doesn't really matter. The way that the method I used was basically creating a SQL token that checks that particular data table and just does a straight select count star of that table, returns the count, and then I dump that into the title of a button that I put on the header of the grid.
Right. Yep. Yes. And
Mm,
as I said, that's kind of my go-to because it's very easy for me to do that. But it is a separate hit on the database. So just
But
wondering.
the can the token get uh, filtering parameters also so that it updates if you filter?
In
Um,
in my case, no, because what my clients want is they want to know the full count,
Yeah.
regardless of
Okay.
what's filtered.
right. So I would think if your data source is dependent, for example, on a query string parameter, that you could pass that same query string parameter to the token.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Uh, so long as I mean we've run into this before that the name of buttons are limited to certain sizes. So uh, as long as there's not too many parameters, you could probably pass them that way. So sounds like tokens is probably the best and easiest approach. But
One of the ways, I don't know if I don't think I've actually done it with parameters, but I mean, maybe there is a way of doing it if you're tricky about it. But one of the things that I have done in my tokens is passing the module ID of the grid, and then I actually pull out the SQL statement for that module ID, and then do whatever adjustments need to be done or insert, commands for declarative statements of variables or whatever, and then do a dynamic execution of that SQL statement and return its result set.
excuse me.
The nice
Well,
thing about doing it that way is you don't have to write the SQL statement again. It
mm-hmm.
just basically reutilizes the SQL statement already as the data source of the grid. And, obviously, if you change the data source, then you don't have to change it elsewhere. It just reuses it.
Yep. And just kind of to throw in potential pluses and minuses, and another. The ability to retrieve SQL off the grid could change from version to version, right? How are you retrieving it off the listing?
It is, you guys store, if I remember correctly, I think you store it in JSON, and it's like a variable of data source or something like that. So I just pull out the JSON, pull out the data source, and that's my SQL.
Yep. As long as we keep it in the same place, then you're good. So just I guess to close the loop on this one of the things that I did with this, I've got this number of records shown 11. This is not by any means a polished thing, but this is the total of this one record column, and it needs to be displayed. The column needs to be there, but um, if you don't want to have that ugly one in there, one of the ways around that is to say that the format is true or false, and then don't provide any true false values, so it ends up zeroing it out. And then I'm gonna get rid of the title altogether, so you end up with a column that's not being shown but has still has a count. And it's nice that it's dynamic.
I was wondering if if we looked in in the um, the template for for the listing, for the data table listing, well, I was wondering if there was any way to hook into what actually shows when you're do paging. So the value that shows when you do paging. I don't know. Just it was an idea that that came to me, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's that's a really good point.
Because the data's there. It seems like it should be easier to get to. That's for sure.
Yep. I know that one of our regulars, who's not on the call today, has done a contribution that moves this the pager elsewhere onto the page. So
Hmm.
um, I suppose with some let's see if I can find with some JavaScript, you could scrape it off and put it somewhere and hide it and things like that. Let me see if I can find this. 30, 31. Sure. Okay, 131. Thirty-one of 31. So yeah, it doesn't seem to be separate as a piece of data. It's just being rendered. Okay. Um, so in researching this, I found there's a feature here that is that I haven't used in a long time. Where is it? In a button, there is the show sum, and this apparently did certain functionality under Bootstrap 3, and it seems to be different or unimplemented in Bootstrap 5. So that wasn't the answer either. So that's another ticket I'll have to send. We have an ongoing project to replace our Bootstrap, all the functionality we had in Bootstrap 3 into Bootstrap 5, or as much of it as we can. So that's something I have yet to add to our stack for the developers to get into. All right, well, so that was my detour. Any final thoughts before we move on to another topic? Cool. Um, and there's still time for first call if anybody has one of those. I
I
mentioned on,
have one, if I could, if I
oh,
may.
please.
Um, a couple of weeks ago, I asked about doing a string split, and Ben told me about DNN having one, and that SQL has one in if you have the latest up to date. So I have the latest, and I did a quick test, and yeah, it's very cool. But then I fell down. Um, the record that I'm trying uh, to put into the database is I do the string split, which gives me all the words that I want, and now I have records with words. But in those same new table entries, I want to not only put the word, but I also want to put the position in the string. So is it the first word, the 10th word, etc. And then I also want to put what paragraph in my document was this in. So that's just a matter of building out the SQL to add those two other uh, fields in the insert, which is fine. But here's my problem. The I created an entity for the word table, and so I also created an entity for the paragraph table. So what I'm storing all of the paragraphs so that all of the punctuation and all of that stuff is kept in one place, and I can go back to that paragraph and display the paragraph saying this is, it's the whole project is an index. The problem is this: when I tested my little SQL statement, I got an error because I think because it's an entity. What I'm seeing when I do the insert, I get an error saying that the insert statement conflicted with the foreign key constraint FK word paragraph ID. I tried to just put a number into the SQL statement for the paragraph ID, and it says it occurred in the database, well, in the table paragraph. So apparently, I can't do it if I use the entities, but if I created the table where instead of it being of type uh, paragraph of entity paragraph, I just say it's an integer, then I don't have the foreign key, right? Or do I need to do it a different way?
So at a very superficial level, I'll say, when you create an entity, it creates a SQL table. When you turn on certain features like using a list, at, connecting to another entity or a list of entities, then we automatically create the foreign keys for you to those other tables. Patrick, check me on this if you have more information. And then we add some indexes depending on which things that you set for searchable, filterable. So we're doing a lot of the SQL database management work for you. If we add foreign keys, then that just says that if you start doing SQL inserts outside of using um, our um, actions that would do that for you, and there's nothing wrong with doing it. It's just that now you've got to obey or follow the foreign keys. So whatever, if you have an understanding of what the foreign key structure is, what's required, follow along with what we're already doing when you do it manually, for example. Then you've got to do that same thing uh, in order. You've got to obey the foreign key.
Got it. So basically no cheating. If I build with entities, I stick with entities.
Well,
Otherwise,
no, there's really good reason to use SQL, and this has kind of been one of our ongoing topics. Um, if you use entities in our actions that insert, that tends to be a one by one low code, and you can do a great deal of stuff, but it's slow. And when you're talking about indexing a book, um, and you're getting it down to the word level, doing it by SQL will save you a ton of time, right? Because SQL is incredibly fast. If you've set it up with a nice bulk insert, but it has to follow the rules. So and maybe uh, maybe we could dig in and find what foreign keys or what kind of conditions create the foreign keys. But it's just if you have a foreign key to something else, then now when you create records, those foreign keys have to exist and be valid values. You can't create records that don't have them.
And what Ben said is correct, but also just it's important to understand here that that the constraint that exists here is that you can't from your relationship you can't have two records that have the same combination of IDs from from the parent and child tables. That's the constraint there.
And Jim is being polite. Jump in, Jim.
Well, I just wondered if in Don's relationship, is this when he's adding his words and once it's requiring the paragraph to be already identified, my solution on that I've had to do in the past is create a placeholder record, in his case, as a put a paragraph with a known key value of 1 or -1 or something like that. And then I might have a secondary process that goes back and aligns all the words with that value to the paragraph they came from. That way it passes the foreign key requirement because it is a valid value and it's detectable that oh, this is a valid value. My word here isn't assigned to a paragraph. I need to go reassign it.
Is any of that helping, Don?
Um, I haven't taken that class yet.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous on what other things I need to do to uh, individually. I mean, I'm trying to use the low code because it's low code, and so working around what additional things you give me to make a make a cheat is right now it's beyond me. I don't know what I need to do. So I not positive how I got what Jim said, but I'm not positive how I can make that work because I don't know how many records I am going to create in the split because I don't know how many words are in there. So I'm gonna, there's n words in the string, so I'm going to create n records. How do I know what records I go back to set the paragraph value in low code? So I'm not positive how to go back and do that. I did have another solution, but again, like you said, it's slow because it's, calling on a bunch of actions and doing the split in in actions rather than in SQL. So I'm not taking advantage of SQL, but I am taking advantage of low code. So I'm kind of torn at this point which way to go with it. My simple solution would be to go back, remove the entity thing, say that the paragraph ID is a number, and be done. And I could just put the
Well,
SQL thing in there to put the paragraph ID number, which is just an integer, in the field in SQL and not worry about foreign keys.
so let's see, there's nothing wrong with creating tables of your own in the database and um, structuring them the way you want. It is only that uh, now you don't have the advantage of the automatically built low code pages, whatever. You build your own table. You're responsible for getting things into it and out of it, and it'll all work with listings, and it'll be fine. You just don't have all the actions and automatic built forms and grids and things like that.
And
Yeah,
I know it's I know it's the thing that's causing you a headache right now, which I think I'd want to see what your implementation is. But the other advantage that using the entity builder does give you is it is properly setting up things like foreign keys and which is good database structure.
yeah.
The before I know Ben's got his hand up, and I appreciate. Let me just finalize my thought here, which is the other the other way I would approach something like this would be if you create the entities and the structure works for you, and you can manually create records just to understand how you can how it would be done manually, and then look very closely at the values that get set. That's you have to replicate that same functionality in your SQL, right? So get a clear understanding in your mind of what a target is that works, which you can do by manually inserting records using the interface, and then and querying the SQL, and then when it's right in your mind, I think you might find a path to doing it with SQL. Ben has a better answer though. Please answer.
No, not necessarily a better answer, but there was one thing that you mentioned on that I just I don't know, it set off like a little bell in my head. Um, if you're trying to index everything like in a waterfall type scenario, so bigger to smaller. So, you have your entire text, then your text is broken up into chapters, your chapters are broken up into paragraphs, paragraphs into words or lines or whatever.
Exactly.
Um, the thing that you have to worry about in the sense of what you were just saying, where you go down to the word level and the word is assigned to a paragraph. My only thing that like rang in my head was, let's say you have a word like the, you don't want, 52,000 entries of the word the with a individual paragraph number assigned to it. The quicker way of doing it would be to have one entry for the word the and have a mapping table that says this word is found in all of the following paragraphs. That's why that mapping table is so important, because it will cut down the size of your database dramatically. Otherwise, if you go by that like 1-to-1 ratio, you're going to wind up with a whole slew of duplicates where the only difference is what parent is it pointing to, but the actual value is exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. And I did think of it very straightforwardly. And you're right. I I guess I didn't worry about the size of the database because I could understand the simple relationship to it. But I'm not positive how the mapping table would work because that's still the same number of records, I think, right? Because there's still, for the word there's going to be all of these records that show where you find in the book. What chapter, what paragraph, what chapter, what book. So
That is true where you're going to have a lot of records. However, indexing integers is notoriously more efficient and faster than indexing text. And depending on the size of the word, the information is also going to be substantially smaller because it's just an integer as opposed to however many characters of a word. So if you have a word that's, 10 letters long, you repeat that, let's just say for argument's sake, 1,000 times, that's a lot of data you're storing as opposed to 1,000 entries of just two integer numbers, where one is the record you're looking at and the other one is the parent that it can be found in.
I got that. Yeah, that makes sense.
And um,
That's very helpful. Yeah, that's a good
And
thought.
with
I
the
have been heading towards that direction with the building it like you had said. I've got a table of books, And then I have a table of chapters that have a book record, and I have a table of paragraphs that have a chapter record, and I have a table of words that have a paragraph, ID. So they all link back that way. But the end result is that I have a huge database of words where there's lots and lots of duplicates, like the word the, and etc. Where if I rethought it and built it in the other direction, and somehow it's just started, with the database, building it from, word by word, just scanning the words and putting an entry in, and then if you see a duplicate, just reference where you found it, would be a simpler database, a faster database, I should say. I just had to rethink that.
Jim, please play in.
So we have a similar application that does this with addresses. The other thing we have in our design is a table that is words that we don't want to include in the index. So in your case, you wouldn't, it's where that's located is not important to you because it's everywhere. So that was all I was going to add.
Right. And I think that's, for me, that's sort of a second step, because the intent of the effort is to get a list of the words and have it alphabetical so that a person can scan the list looking for strange, obscure terms, strange words that then when you see that, you click on it to go and look at the place that it's found so you can get context. And then from there, create a definition for that word. It's to take some, older written works and put help people understand what that meant, so that they could read the older works without somebody rewriting the older works in modern language and then losing some of the meaning that the original author had. That's the intent of the effort. But I don't know what those words are, and I don't have the AI capability to decide that "the" is not a word I want in the dictionary, because I don't, I don't know how to. Where's my dictionary of words that I don't care about? So so I right now I'm going to have somebody, just scan that list, pick words, and then click on it, and then add a new record to the table, which is here's the definition of that word.
One of the nice things about once you acquire the database of words, that you'll be able to run a frequency count kind of thing that will probably help you quickly identify all these repetitive words that that you can then ignore, right? So if you have the ones that occur only once or twice in the course of an entire book are going to be probably ones that you're going to want to focus in on needing a definition for, and the ones that occur 20,000 times in the course of a book is probably a bridge or an unimportant or unnecessary word to define.
Exactly, exactly. So sorting it by frequency and then by, alphabetically, would be a great way of a human looking through the list.
Yep.
Cool. Well, the reason why I'm excited about Ben's suggestion of how to, rethink the database is I've got time to rethink the database. As I was fighting through this, I was thinking I'm getting further and further behind on my timeline, and I want to get a result. And the main result that I want is to be able to give my author the the data. Here's your list of words. And there are tools that will do that. I get an EPUB, feed it into Calibri, and run a report on words, and I'm done. So all the effort that I'm doing with Planet App is out there with a Calibri, but my words, the words that are in the books that we're trying to do, are not then in a database that I can offer other people, and so I do still want to do the project, but I can get her moving with another tool while I rethink. That's kind of where I'm going to go right now, is to rethink how to structure this data per what Ben just suggested.
Nice. All right. Do we have another first call? I guess that would be a second call. right. If somebody has something, jump in. In the meantime, I'm going to jump to other topics. I mentioned in Low Code Cafe this week that we're not going to hit the May 7th date of 3 days ago to release version 1.26. Currently, the thinking is early next week, so we're just doing some final testing. A lot of vacations happened among our development team last week, so it held up some things. Because we're talking about version 126, and this would be kind of an interesting one. Let's take a look at feature requests for a minute. I went to feature requests just to see what's new out there, and I ran into this red and ugly screen. So, we had a nice working app for a long time, and then all of a sudden we're getting an error on our public page. I don't know if this shows up in public. Let me see. Go in here incognito and see what it looks like. Yeah, we're just publicly, you would see this. We got a problem. Go see the site administrator. Internally, I see this. And this message is exactly what I was dealing with in Low Code Cafe this week, that the system that this is calling, which is our build internal Plantain app, no longer supports this older version of the API call. And so it blows up. So somebody upgraded build internal to 126. Build internal doesn't answer. So this is one of these things that's easy enough to fix, and I'll go ahead and do it now, but it's the whole subject of what I spent an hour on in the Low Code Cafe. So this happens to be, I think, module area, has this older URL format. I'm just going to copy it, so in case I make a mistake, I can go back and look at my clipboard. But the new format, instead of saying all that, it's just /API/ and then the name of the module. So we used to support two different ways to call the same module. Now we just, the same API. Now we only support this other format. So let's save that and see if it resolves the issue. And it does. So that's one of the breaking changes in version 126. And yeah, so and in Low Code Cafe, when I covered that, I covered the a global search and replace tool to go find these without having to individually change them. So that's a topic. So in feature requests, I think this was as a result of maybe our conversation last time. Ben had one here that said that, hey, we need to rename this action, and if you were inclined to vote for that, we would. You're welcome to encourage to. I'll put the links to that. Anybody else with any recent ones that they want to promote before we move on to another topic? Cool. So in the world of campfire contributions, this is a common website where we share techniques. As a result of last week's conversation about extend list properties and the discovery that extend list properties can also be used on a row by row level, I added an illustration about that. So that's something continuing if you followed from last episode and want to actually see that, or want to come back to it and see how it works, then you can do that. And then in Cafe, I introduced that I put out here a global search and replace tool, so that you can search throughout your database for any topic, any string, and it will do a table by table, column by column search for that thing, and in addition have the ability to fix it. So I covered it kind of in depth in Cafe, and you're you're welcome to go back and look at that. I'll be happy to answer questions, but what you get out of this is some JSON that, if we look at it in a more formatted way here, that it shows the table where this thing was found. So in this case, that particular string I was looking for was in the action form fields table, was in the input data column, and you can find all the occurrences of it using this select SQL, and you can change all the occurrences of it if you apply this fix SQL. So this fix SQL is based on, I said, if you find this, I'm going to want to change it to that. And so where did that go? So the update SQL never runs as a result of this workflow that I provided. It just provides SQL that you could use to fix it if you wanted to. So it says, go find records in that particular table where input data looks like the search thing, and then we're going to do a replace on that. So that's if you don't have a global search and replace tool and you want something that could be used as the basis for one or the basis to do some global fixing in your database, this is not limited to plant and app tables. It's throughout your database. I have this, I want to change it to that globally. You could do that. Questions? People have solutions for this already?
Yes, that is a remarkable tool. Thank you very much for that.
Sure. So just you can look at the workflow if you're a member of Campfire, and anybody can become a member of Campfire if they pass the background check. But you can also just download the workflow, and so you take this and import it in all of this, import it into your plant and app system as a workflow, and then you just run it, and it asks these same questions. What are you looking for? If you want to replace it, what do you want to replace it with? And then there's an option, show raw data. This will actually return all the rows that have an occurrence of this. So you can see individual rows. This just shows the SQL to go get it and the SQL to update it if you want to. And again, we don't automatically run the SQL to update it. So it's safe to run the workflow. What you do with the output is on you, though. Take a look at it carefully.
Yeah.
So those are the two new contributions.
I haven't done anything similar to that, but if you don't mind me interjecting one thing, I haven't done something for a replace, but I have written my own code search because there's lots of times, for example, I create a my token that only has one parameter, and then I update the token. Now it requires two parameters, but now I need to find every single place where I've used it. So I created a search where it literally searches everywhere, tells me if it's in a workflow, in a form, in an action grid, what item is it in? Is it in a button? Is it in an action? What the action ID is, the whole nine yards. But one of the things that I found is there are certain values that SQL does not like when you place them in a like search. For example, brackets, the square brackets. So you have to use what's known as an escape switch. I couldn't think of the word. In your where clause. So when you say where something is like something, then it's space escape, and then you designate an escape character. So for example, you could do front slash or something like that. And then when you're actually doing your search, you need to escape out those special symbols. Otherwise, SQL is going to choke on it. And by choke, usually what I mean is it's not going to find a match where you would expect it would. So you may, turn around and it says it found no records. Meanwhile, there could be 15 records all because it's not finding it because of the way the SQL is written. Just a heads up.
And there's a really, really good chance that that I just encountered that. I was looking for a token, and oh well, it actually did finally return something, so we'll see. But yeah, I might have. This is use at your own risk. Your mileage may vary. I don't think that this script takes into consideration that kind of thing. So there might be room for
You
improvement on this.
you did get results there though. But I think the reason it took so long is because the date time now token is probably used a lot. So it's probably in the creation of the select and upstate statements. Just a guess. I don't know.
And I'll try again. I'm going to do raw data just to see what we get, and I'll use something a little less um, populated. But one of the things about this is calling a workflow to do the work, and one of the characteristics of a workflow is that when you pass in something that has a token, it's always about the tokens, right? That causes us issues. When you pass in a token into a workflow, the workflow always tries to resolve the token. So unless you escape it, in this case, I used curly braces to build my escape, but unless you escape it, the token gets resolved on the way into the workflow. So now it's no longer searching for datetime ISO, but instead the current datetime ISO, does the replace. So that's one of the challenges of trying to work with tokens in a token-based system. All right, I'm going to let that perk in the background and see what happens. Cool. We can, if we don't have any better topics, we can go to our low-code playbook. Stop me, somebody. Okay, here we go. So the quick introduction is we are developing a low-code development playbook. This is how our team delivers projects. We're supposed to follow the rules of this playbook when we work for other people so that we deliver good, high-quality projects. We have lots and lots of policies, and we're building these up one at a time. But here's a couple that are in draft status. So this says that somebody's thought of this as a good idea, but we haven't really documented it out as a fully complete thought and rules and how to do it. So, but just some ideas. And of course, I'm not logged in. So, and I don't know, we're going to learn too much more by digging into these. The first draft is that to create expected application roles from the start of the project. So within creation of an entity, for example, there's the ability to do permissions. Let's do that. Just to illustrate what I'm talking about. So you're in configuration, you're in entities, you create a new entity, you've got the general properties, but the page that, and you'll see me do this all the time in Low Code Cafe because I'm just trying to get something done, but we don't pay any attention to the permissions page. And then later on, when people are trying to use this, because we've just accepted the defaults, now certain things don't run. So the suggestion of the play then is that if you stop and think about it at the time that you're developing the entity and make sure that you have all the roles that you need and that you set permissions for them early, do the work early, think about it, do the design so that you don't then later come back and frustrate users. Oh, well, I'm trying to use this thing. You've done all your development as as an administrator with all kinds of rights and everything works fine, but you turn a user loose and it doesn't work because they don't have rights. Anybody encountered this? Anybody with ideas on whether this is
Oh, yes, this has bitten me quite a few times because in the grand scheme of things, someone coming from a place where we used to create our own tables and whatnot, permissions were not something that were a part of a table. They were something that you had to manually employ yourself. So coming into creating entities in Plantain app, it's a different animal in the sense that the entity itself has permissions that Plantain app will, look at when you're using the built-in methods or actions that it creates for you. Um, my suggestion is move the permissions tab prior to properties. The very last thing that should be done is designing the table. Because what I think a lot of people do is, and myself, you start at general, you go into properties, you finish filling out your properties, and you hit save. And I completely always forget that there's a permissions tab. But if you make the properties tab the last thing you do, then you're forcing them to remember, hey, there are permissions on this table that you need to make sure you address correctly. And then after that, you can go and design your fields. At least that's my 2 cents.
I think that's an incredible suggestion, Ben. I mean, it's so subtle. I mean, it's a little human engineering, right? Not changing functionality, just moving the tabs around. And this continue button that we have here, if it went then to permissions as the number 2, and then you could have a continue, we could activate this continue button. Oh, let's see. No,
Well, you would be adding a continue button to
here.
permissions and then removing the continue button on properties because that'd be the
Yes.
last tab.
Just to make it, just reorder it. I can't think of any negative to that suggestion. Patrick? No? Okay.
No, I think it makes sense to me too.
That would be what we would call a micro improvement. But so then that would definitely support the play, our best practice. Think about these things in advance. At least you'd be forced to skip past it, and then when your users start complaining that it doesn't work for them, then it's not our fault. That's the main thing. It's not Dale's fault.
I still would love to see the default fields hidden and reclaim that real estate.
Yes. We have all these things that fill half the screen that you can't change or interact with, but they're there to let you know that it's present. So
either hidden or move it to the bottom of the page. Because I feel like there's so little screen real estate when you're adding the custom properties, because the one on top is eating up all that space. You can't really see a whole lot of what's on the screen.
And there's many techniques that, as you point out, that we could move it to bottom. I suspect these could be designed as collapsible and defaulted to being collapsed.
That's what I was about to suggest. Collapse it. Yeah.
So I will put that one in as well. So that's one thing. And then actually I skipped. So there were 2, and these were related. One was create the expected roles from the start of the project, and I started talking about this second one, set entity permissions when the entity is first created. So the other thought is that there's the ability to add roles, and when you're you can create a role with a description. So we can create our own role, and then when you're working with a new entity, it shows up in the permissions, and you have the ability to set and what can that role do. So those were really linked. We should the other piece then is to think about, it's not just setting the default for the setting the permissions on the default roles that we provide, but really thinking about what roles in your application are you going to have. You're going to have, for example, if you have different level of users, then just using our users role might not be appropriate for you. So understanding your end user needs, who's going to be signing in, and being able to provide differences, different experiences depending on the kind of user. So adding the right roles at the start was kind of implicit in the first thing. And Ben is going to play in again.
Sorry, I don't mean to be talking so much, but just something that popped in my head. Because again, I'm thinking about situations that have happened to me where I'm creating an entity, I'm in the permissions area, and then I realize, yeah, it makes sense to have a separate role to do certain things like, let's say all users can view, but only the do minor stuff can edit. But I didn't create the role ahead of time. So then I have to save this, go to my roles, create the role, save that, come back here, edit this, go to the last page, and then make my changes. What I would be nice is in that drop down, or some, not even a drop down, excuse me, somewhere on here, maybe to have a button that says add new role, where a pop-up can come up just like it does in the roles page. You can add the role right from this page, and then you have access to it. It will refresh this list and it appears. So you don't have to actually save this back out, go somewhere else, make a change, and come all the way back in here to do it if you had forgotten to create the role ahead of time.
Yep, that certainly makes sense in the category of we were talking earlier about rearranging these tabs, which would be a little bit of moving around the deck chairs, versus that would be a true effort. But it would make the product better. I think there's there's other opportunities for us to do the same thing. Like, for example, you're working in a workflow and you want to create another workflow, so that you can make it easy. The current process is you have to save that and go work on the new workflow and then come back and build it, versus just being able to build it from where you are. Mark, you are passionate on this topic. Please play.
Passionate? Yeah, my idea is actually related to something that Patrick said earlier, so I think he'll be able to chime in with his more refined concept of this. But we always need to have a user that has a lot of permissions. Like if we want our program to create a user, they have to have the permission to do that. And so I'm in the practice of creating a role at the beginning of any application. I call it entity user, and it just means, they can do things to entities. Kind of like all permissions are in this role. And I use it sparingly, but
and I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you called it.
Do you really need to know?
No, I thought you skipped past it, so or maybe I didn't hear it. If you didn't say it, that's fine.
Well, you can call it whatever you like, as long as you know what it's called.
Okay.
And the idea is it's the go-to role you can use while you're doing your workflows or your action form stacks or whatever. It's going to have the permission to do that godlike thing you needed to have permissions to do. But obviously you use it sparingly, but we do need those kind of roles from time to time. So that's one of the roles I just make at the beginning of any application.
But it's also not an administrator role, which is important too, because often we we kind of default to full admin rights for the when we do that, but it's nice that you have a role, you have a that user that has that specific ability.
Very good. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to ask you for state secrets.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's important that I would share it or not. Like I don't think anyone could use it against me, but it could be whatever you want it to be called.
I don't think so either. I just thought you said it and I missed it. So, yeah. Okay. Cool. Great. We have coasted into our hour. We're gonna be happy to continue the discussion on our Afterglow segment. But happy that you joined us for this hour, and we will be here at least one of us will be here next week. We'll do this because we do this every week. So hope to see you then. Thanks, everyone.